You pathetic loser. Look at you. These are the words that would go through my head every single time I looked in the mirror around this time last year. It was absolutely revolting the way I would talk to myself. My mental health was at an all-time low. In the previous video I made, I went over what actual steps led to being in this mental state, but now I want to talk to you about how I got out of it to the point where now I have nothing but positive self-talk. Every single time I look in the mirror, I can't help but think, you are the man. Look at you. You look incredible. You're capable of literally anything. You're that charismatic, magnetic individual with undeniable aura. The first thing that had to change was taking brutal ownership, meaning that I had to take 100% accountability for everything that went wrong, meaning point the finger of blame directly back at yourself, because you can't change anything unless you take responsibility. However, when you take responsibility, this is only step 0, because once you realize that everything is your fault and you don't take relentless action, man, your mental health degrades every single day. And that's exactly what was happening to me. But it wouldn't have even been possible to make a change unless I looked in the mirror and fully realized just how much everything my fault was. And after this point, I knew something had to change. I wanted to build a remarkable life, but I was stuck in mediocre stagnation, looking like a sack of cottage cheese with the mental health of a depressed loser. I would start my day by waking up at a random time and just lying in bed with an existential dread, unwilling to get up and start my day until the last possible moment. And then, once I did finally decide to roll out of bed, it was immediately onto the phone to scroll my pain away, put on a educational podcast or something that was actually just more escapism into the lives of others, and then just drag myself through the day. I would do my best to go to the gym before work, but there was no vigor, there was no aggression, there was no focus in any of my workouts. It was literally just flopping through the motions like a flaccid willy, completely, just swinging around from exercise to exercise without any clear structured program, a vague idea of what I was doing that day, and then wasting so much time between every set thinking, oh, what exercise am I going to do next? What exercise am I going to do next? Then obviously I would go to work, to a job that, was sucking the soul out of me, even though I do the same job now and I absolutely love it because my mental state is so much better. And then, while I was working, just carrying on numbing the pain, making everything slower, less efficient, more chaotic by trying to multitask and be productive by listening to, YouTube videos, podcasts, and anything to distract me away from my current reality. And then once the workday was done, it was time to go home to my triple dopamine stack, which was chess, entertainment, and junk food all at the same time. Man, this was true instant pleasure maxing, but every single time I would get done, I would feel hollow. I would have online chess on my phone with Netflix in the window, like that screen in screen type of window, so that I could see the chessboard while Netflix was playing, while I was stuffing my face. Man, it was It wasn't any way to live. What a disgusting fiend. I was obviously not doing well at chess because my mind was distracted. I wasn't enjoying the Netflix show as much because I was trying to play chess. And I wasn't enjoying the food as much because I was trying to do everything all at once. But essentially, that was my triple dopamine stack that would keep me stuck in this loop of chasing instant pleasure. But that was just the symptom. The root cause was I hated myself and I needed to escape away from the pain. The first thing that inspired me to start taking relentless action was getting so sick of my situation that I knew there was no other choice. There was either the pain of staying the same and continuing to stagnate, or the pain of getting my shit together and doing the uncomfortable things that I desperately did not want to do. And so the trigger was a certain individual who shouts at you with aggression, who was screaming at me from his car, telling me what little pussy I was being. And of course, if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's John Mark. Who else could it be? So, you know, thank you, John Mark, for inspiring me to start taking action and changing my life. So, after I took brutal ownership and got inspired to take action, what was the first action I actually took? Well, it was setting my morning alarm for 5 a.m. and rising with it every single day, no matter how I felt. Not lying in bed debating and trying to negotiate with my inner cuck goblin about, oh, do I just fall back asleep so I can get my 8 hours? No. Alarm goes off, we rise. And no matter how late we went to bed, no matter how tired we are, this is all about building back self-trust by starting the day immediately with discomfort. So, the first few days of this were rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. The insomnia started kicking in again because the night before I was lying awake just dreading how uncomfortable it would be to rise. But I did so anyway, and before long, I had stabilized. I was sleeping just fine, waking up with reasonable ease. You know, I adapted rather quickly. And then I realized, what the hell am I waking up at 5 a.m. for? What am I doing this early rise for if I'm not actually going to fill this time productively? So I immediately hopped in the cold shower and, you know, sped off to the gym. And this was different because I already told you I was still going to the gym during this mental depression phase. Now, filled with more vigor because I was waking up this early and I was starting to feel a bit more like that guy, I started attacking the weights with a lot more aggression, more intensity, more drive, more focus. So I would leave the gym on a high, feeling elated, like, okay, yeah, I'm actually starting to take the steps necessary in order to change my life. But I knew that it couldn't end there. I knew that the habits had to feed into the rest of my life. So I had to cut out all of the garbage, all of the processed junk that I would binge on after a clean day of eating that I was doing before, because you can eat clean all day like I was doing, but it's that last binge of the day that takes away all of your mental progress. And obviously, as you saw by my disgusting old physique, the garbage adds up. And so one habit, the 5 a.m. rise, started to feed into more and more good habits. I stopped masturbating entirely. From the time I set the 5 a.m. alarm, I was like, no, I'm not someone who wanks anymore. I wasn't on NoFap. I didn't track my days. It's been it's been almost a year since then. And I've touched myself a few times here and there, but it wasn't like, oh, I broke my streak. It was literally just, okay, yeah, a tactical wank at times just to, reduce my energy levels. Didn't work, but hey, we experimented, we failed. But anyway, I stopped masturbating. I reduced my just mindless consumption. I reduced my stuffing the face with the junk food, and I did a week. I did a week where I completely cut the noise. Where before that week, I was going through my days and I always had something playing on in the background in my headphones. But for this week, I was like, no, nothing but silence and my thoughts. And let me tell you, my thoughts were a bit rough because even though I was starting to build back the self-trust and the, self-esteem, I still had a long way to go. But this week definitely gave me some clarity about what actual work I want to pursue with my life and what mission I want to embark upon. And guess what? It's this, some form of this. I was like, yeah, okay, I mean, I'm in this for the long run anyway. I'm not going to see results overnight. I'm not going to just click my fingers and speed run my way to success no matter what I choose. So I might as well choose something that I'm actually, obsessed with, something that I can just become completely taken over by, something that I'll actually enjoy, which is this, helping others improve their lives. And obviously this is a very vague thing to say, so I'm starting with a physique, as you can see by my content. But anyway, let's get back to the task at hand. These habits that I started to build, they started to compound. A lot more power was done by cutting out the negativity rather than adding positivity, like, all the good self-improvement habits like meditation, reading, journaling, etc, etc. If you add them without removing the garbage, man, you're always going to be struggling. It's so much more powerful to cut away the filth. And so I started doing that, and as I began to embark on this journey of self-mastery, I decided to just start posting content again. I started writing on LinkedIn. Every single day I would, make a text post. And slowly but surely, I decided to invest in a coaching mentorship to help me build a coaching business. But I definitely jumped the gun a bit because I'd only just started to, personally develop. As a matter of fact, I only just started the walk of atonement. I hadn't actually got to the true personal development yet, but that's a very complex discussion that we'll have at a later time. But anyway, as I was doing stuff, as I was finally starting to live each day with more fulfillment, more purpose, my aura started to improve. The world started to be kinder to me because I was more confident. That's how it works, right? You can't just expect people to treat you well if you can't treat yourself well. But I was feeling good at the time, but I was still a chaotic, scatterbrained lunatic, and I was trying to build this coaching brand, this business, while broke as a joke. I very prematurely quit my job because I wanted to transfer over to a different job which would align better with my schedule and stuff, but some little, logistical errors happened, and thus for like 6 to 8 weeks I was out of work. My savings were depleting, and I was in a frantic desperation trying to, number one, find a job that would align with my schedule, number two, desperately attract coaching clients, and I did, and I got a couple clients, and guess what? They were both terrible fits because I was not yet that guy. I could not attract who I wanted to coach. I would just desperately take anyone, and what happened. I failed as a coach. I was not able to get them the results that changed their lives. But hey, it's okay. It's a learning process. But anyway, as my aura and my confidence rose, I decided to get into the world of sales because for some reason I had, convinced myself that I needed to prove myself in the real world to show that my methods were applicable in like the world of entrepreneurship, making money and stuff. So I thought to myself, why don't I get a sales job and absolutely crush it, and then I'll prove to everyone that all this self-improvement stuff, it actually works. It was a lot of mental gymnastics. It was a lot of trying to work my way around the root cause of the problem, which was just becoming that aspirational identity. But I ended up joining a sales job, which was an in-person, face-to-face charity fundraiser job. And let me tell you, this was an amazing learning experience that really, really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I won't lie, I started off very strong. I was the talk of the town. The whole office, they knew who Matt was, let me tell you that. I definitely made my mark, if you would. And this really, really opened up my eyes to human psychology and how normies think, because every single day I would speak to fluoride fucks, just these NPCs basically, and I learned the codex of the NPC, which will be very useful for the rest of my life. However, this job, it was very intense, very fast-paced, very mentally draining, and I very quickly realized that it was something that I had to go all in on if I was gonna see good results at, and I just wasn't willing to do that because I wanted so much more from life. I wanted to build my own brand, my own coaching business, which this job simply did not align with. So I ended up just leaving to get into high ticket online sales because I thought, yeah, that'll be more aligned, because then I'll prove to myself, I'll prove to everyone that all of this self-improvement stuff, it makes me more money. And I'm sure it would have worked if I'd actually stuck to it, but very quickly, very soon, I realized there was still a massive misalignment. I jumped onto quite a shitty offer, but it still wasn't the offer's fault. I just wasn't skilled enough to make it work. Either way, it was still a great opportunity of putting myself out of my comfort zone, going through the dread and the pain of jumping on sales calls with, business owners who thought they were hot shit, even though they were coming to us because they had a problem that we could solve, but they just weren't willing to commit. Either way, that's not important. The point is, it was a misaligned opportunity because it stole so much time and focus and mental bandwidth away from what I truly wanted to pursue. But for some reason, I had matrixed myself. I had done all these mental gymnastics to convince myself that I have to make it in sales in order to be able to be a good coach, which is complete nonsense, right? It doesn't make any sense, but I genuinely convinced myself that was reality. So essentially, you could say I got lost in the sales sauce, and I definitely learned a lot. I now realize that, if everything fails, if the worst comes to the worst, I can always jump on an offer, get good at sales, and make enough money to live a good life. And it's still quite enjoyable, being in the flow state, playing these mental games with people on the Zoom call. Even though it's not mental games, you're trying to genuinely solve their problems, but it's very interesting, deeply psychological, but at the end of the day, it still wasn't aligned with what I truly wanted. So I felt this misalignment, and I was in a frantic sort of state, desperately trying to reclaim the momentum that I built before, because I was dead broke at the time. I was flailing around trying to, find a job, because obviously these sales jobs that I was doing, they were commission only, and because of my, frantic lack of focus, I was underperforming. Because yet again, have you spotted the theme yet? The monkey mind. It can ruin everything. But anyway, I allowed this misalignment to feed into a bit of a desperation state, where I was like, oh, okay, I felt myself losing who I was just a few months ago, and I was like, oh no, I have to get back to it. I have to get back to it. I have to get back to it. But this is a common rookie mistake, where you might be in a different season of life. You should literally breathe, slow down your mental turmoil, and go with the flow, rather than trying to reclaim a version of yourself you were before. That's how true evolution happens, because then, only then, you can actually step into the next version of yourself who is capable of conquering the next goals you set. So I allowed this misalignment to let me fall back into a mini rut. It was nothing compared to what I went through last year, just before my walk of atonement. But it was a little bit, it was getting there. I felt myself slipping back into old habits, old thought patterns, very briefly, while still trying to desperately reclaim who I once was before. And at the time, I was still posting a little bit of content here and there. Just scroll back a few months and watch those videos. You can tell there's a certain energy that I'm portraying on camera, that something feels off, right? And that's because something was off mentally, because I was still not just flowing, not being in the present moment, still overthinking, still feeding the monkey mind. And so I went through a phase of trying to reclaim who I was by doubling down on discipline. But this was discipline without direction, which I actually made a video about just a few months ago. So, scroll back and watch that if you're interested. It actually did pretty well, because I think it resonated with a lot of people. Essentially, I made the analogy that discipline without direction is like sharpening your sword without ever going to battle, right? Your sword wants blood, and if you keep on sharpening it, it will wither away to nothing. So I was still, this discipline without direction thing, I was brute forcing my way through my early wake ups, eating clean, training, all of that stuff, but it felt very purposeless. There was absolutely no effortless flow to anything I did. It was so much friction to do the good habits, simply because of internal alignment and lack of purpose. But guess what, bro? That purpose is back, stronger than ever. I'm absolutely on fire, flowing through every day, in love with the process. That's what finally changed everything, when I completely stopped focusing on the results of my efforts and started focusing on the efforts themselves, and truly being in love with the process, because that's all we have at the end of the day. No matter how much success we build, no matter how many materials we acquire, all we're gonna have on a day-to-day basis is the actual process, the tasks, the activities that we're engaged in, the mental state that we're experiencing. And ever since I fell in love with the process, guess what? The results have been better than ever. My videos have been doing a lot better, and every single day I'm building upon this momentum, feeding into the flow state, and just enjoying myself even when I'm suffering, because I have been suffering throughout this whole time. There have been a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles that I've documented in real time if you look at my previous videos. But nonetheless, I'm so grateful for just being here and having the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you so much. I hope this was valuable. I'll see you when I see you.